Hello to another edition of the Coaches Roundtable. We've been going for weeks. Every single week we do the Coaches Roundtable around a topic or a theme that we do a deep dive on. But before we get started on the topic of the day, let's see who we've got around the table. Russell, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Lubna. Russell Eubanks, great to be here. I own my company, Security Ever After, where we help companies who've lost their cybersecurity executive.
Camille.
Hi, Camille Nisich. I am an advisor, investor, and coach, and I help innovators find and plug the cash flow leaks in their business so they can fund their growth. Over to you, Jonathan.
All right. Well, my name is Jonathan Howard. I'm the owner of Success on Social, and I help coaches create content so they can reach their ideal clients and make some money being their authentic selves on social media. Back to you, Lubna.
Thank you. And my name is Lubna. I'm a mindset and performance coach. I help you achieve the goals so you can live the life you desire. And the topic of today is one that we have spoken about earlier, especially on Clubhouse, when we discussed the difference between coaching and mentoring and consulting, because there are three different words who do three different things, and a lot of people use them trying to say the same thing. But today, inspired by Sid, who is our fellow coach who couldn't be here today, who shared a beautiful story about the impact of a mentor, we said we have to discuss this topic because every single person needs a mentor, and you will have multiple mentors in your life. And we would warmly recommend you find a mentor in your life at this moment. So let's dive into what exactly is a mentor. Who wants to take this one?
Lubna wants to take this one.
I will write a resource because I feel like this is such a great. We all collectively always talk about terminology and what things mean and how we may define them versus the status quo and what have you. And I will say that I recently was struggling with this word because I have a frame of reference for it. And someone who I consider to be a mentor was using mentor in a different context. So I was just curious, and I looked up one source that basically said a mentor creates a relationship with a mentee that provides a long-term benefit to both parties from knowing one another deeply. So it has this connotation around deep relationship, some sort of long-term benefit and value between the two. And that this is what's interesting. This particular source, which I will share the source, I'll cite it, says that there is no monetary exchange. And that's what I was struggling with because the person who was using the term mentor with me was alluding to the fact that there was a monetary exchange. So I'm curious what the rest of you all think.
Oof, I love it. And Jonathan mentioned my name. Yeah, no, I looked into it. And if you Google the word, what is a mentor, you will get multiple definitions in multiple sources and multiple contexts. So for me personally, the meaning that I appreciate the most is a mentor is someone who has been there before, someone who has overcome the challenges and obstacles you're facing, and who is willing to share their knowledge and experience with you. Now, if you are in the corporate context, that could be someone who you don't pay because they're at a higher level and they already get a salary, but they're willing to help you because you are seeking to move up the corporate ladder in whichever way you want to go. But it could also be someone outside of an organization. If you're an entrepreneur, that you're seeking a mentor who you either pay or because they want to help you don't pay. So for me, that would be the case.
I think. Oh, go ahead, Russell, if you want.
No, please, after you.
So I think one of the things that you mentioned that resonated with me is that they've been there before, and I think that's something that's really important. Because a lot of times we look for mentors that they have our experience or they've done certain things, but we don't know that they've necessarily done what we want to do or where we're going. And I think that's really important is we need to find a mentor that can get us to where we're going and help us get there because we can't always do it ourselves.
Russell?
Yeah, and I love, Camille, that you started off with the definition. And what does it mean to you? And then getting other views where it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's different. And I don't think about it that way. And whether I've never heard of a mentor being paid to do that. I imagine it's possible. It's just my experience, my exposure to mentoring, and being mentored has not led to that. But this idea of what would it look like, and then this idea of I think what's really important is recognizing. On one hand, it's say, "Hey, mentor, will you help me with something?" Okay, great. However, I've seen it as you articulated earlier. It can be, and it should be, dare I say, it must be beneficial to both the mentor and the mentee in that.
So, well, let's dive into this. Who wants to share an experience they have had with a mentor in the past for whom the impact is still feelable today?
All right, who's going first? I went first last time.
I mean,
Since I have the floor and the gentlemen have not jumped in, I will go ahead and do that. I have someone who is truly amazing. His name is Perry Coughlin. I knew him in my corporate career at Dell. He actually recruited me for my internship when I was in grad school to be a summer intern. And then later I hired into his organization after my internship a year later. And he had a profound impact on my career. In the beginning, I worked in his organization and a few levels away from him. But even after I left, he sought me out and said, "Hey, I feel like you're going to need a mentor navigating this company. Would love to be that." And over the course of our relationship, while I loved mentoring with him, and again, it was mutual exchange, there were things that when I worked in his organization, people would not share with him directly, that I could kind of bridge that information for him, and he could help me navigate through the organization. But then even after I wasn't working with him, he helped me in so many ways, both with advice, opening doors, making introductions. And he put in, I couldn't even put a value on the amount of impact that he had on my career and now even my business, because many of the things that I share with my coaching clients or help them work through are things that he helped me work through in the past. So absolutely amazing individual. And later even, and this is a word that we aren't really talking about today, but also later became an advocate for me, which I personally think is different. Advocacy, especially in a corporate environment, is different than mentoring. So yeah, he was just amazing, still has such an impact on my life and my business today, and just truly grateful for him. So yeah.
Awesome. Who's next?
Go ahead, Russell. I went first last time.
Oh, you're too kind. So, I'm thinking about when last time I started a full-time job at the Fed. It was 2015. I knew a lot about my work in cybersecurity, but I didn't know anything at all about how to do that work in the context of that new to me organization. And so identified someone who's been at the organization for a long time, been there like 20 plus years, and I was there along day one. For me, it was my day one. And then just developing that relationship to say, okay, what are the things that I need to know? Yeah, I know how to do cyber stuff, but I don't know how the organization works. I don't know how the culture is. I don't know so much. I don't know. I don't want to mess up. Can I come early? Can I ask you a bunch of questions? Can I quickly kind of get onboarded, if you will, to the role and the organization so that I can, be all I can be? And what's been fascinating is that was back in 2015. I got to start that relationship in person, in real life, in Richmond, Virginia, actually. And to this day, he's still on my VIP list on my text. And I've not been there for 3 years, but back and forth. My good friend, Jeff Peel, he's in Minneapolis. We text, we share, we grow. We've been going off and doing our own things together, all because of that mentoring relationship that he was able to be to me back.
Wow, 10 years ago. That is huge. Jonathan, do you want to share your experience, or shall I go first?
I'll share. I have a mentor that I've had for so I started Barnes & Noble College Bookstores when I was 17 years old. That's when I first started working there. And I first started working with, so Barb Headley pulled me out of the orientation line, literally, and told me, that I was going to be working here. I didn't know who this crazy woman was, but she turned out to be one of my amazing business mentors, and she was probably 10 years older than I was at that time. Well, I guess still is. But she was single, no kids, and was just focused on working. And she's obviously changed a lot. And I ended up, my last position right before I had my own store was as her assistant manager. But over the course of 20 some odd years, I've learned so much from her. So many different things and different like life stages, as well as, business stages. She is now retired and still calls me monthly and makes sure I'm doing the right things. And honestly, other than probably my dad, knows the most about my business and it impacts my business the most.
Wow, that is huge. So my story goes back to 2004, and more specifically November 2004. It was the month that I applied for a new job at the Ministry of Finance here in the Netherlands. And at my last job interview, I had with two managers. Jan was one, and the other one was Marcel. And we had such a beautiful question, exploring our values, exploring some of the things that what matters to us, some of the things that could be a challenge. And it was a beautiful conversation. And after that conversation, it took a couple of days, and I was called and said, Lubna, you are hired. We are offering you a job, and Marcel is going to be your manager, because he had such a great time at your conversation that he was like, I want her in my team. And I still to this day know Marcel. I called him last Tuesday because I connected with someone that he knew back in 1984. That's a very long time ago, which was beautiful because as a result, we scheduled another sushi dinner to catch up because it's been a minute. And what he had taught me in that, over 15 years now is still to this day things that I refer to. And it was small things like one of the very first moments that I remember that he gave me feedback early in my career was, you are such a fast thinker, and that is absolutely a superpower. Just be mindful that people around you are not that fast. So what you do is listen, and then you compute inside your head, and then you blur something out, and people go, how did she end up there? We don't get it. So start observing the people around you to see if they are still following you. And if they don't, then make sure that you bring them along, because you need other people when you are working in a context. And that was one of the most impactful feedbacks that I received from Marcel, because I started noticing the difference. I became hugely effective, always been able to read the room and play that way and achieve goals that I thought I would never be able to achieve. And as a result, when a couple of years ago I was offered the opportunity to write a chapter in a book about the power of mentorship, I said there's one thing that I absolutely want to do, and that is dedicate my chapter on him. And I asked his permission because I wanted to use his name. I said, I want to be able to use your name because I believe the world needs to know the name of the person that has been very impactful. And I still call him to this day. I know his wife. I know what his children are up to, whether they're married or not, where they're living in the world. We have become such good friends, and I still call him whenever I have a challenge or an obstacle. He's the first person I call. You've heard now 4 stories. If you're watching this right now or on the replay, you've heard 4 stories about the impact of having a mentor. And like I said at the beginning in my introduction, it is powerful to look for the person who's been where you want to go and is willing to help you walk the journey that they have walked. But the question is, how do you search for a mentor? Who wants to take that one?
That's a really good question, Lubna, because I think in all of our situations, our mentors sort of found us. And I think that for a lot of situations, that's how it happens. It's almost serendipitous. I wanted to use the big word today. It's almost serendipitous. It's like you're in the right place at the right time and you find the right person. I've tried to search for mentors. Not always successful. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, no, you paused, and so I thought you were finished. But I think you're right. And I've actually been a mentor in formal programs, but typically it's more organic when I am the mentee for whatever reason. So that is an interesting one. I also think that there's a value of almost feeling like you're mentored by the people who you probably will never meet, like authors and, public figures and that sort of thing. I know that one of the things that's been top of mind with a couple of my clients is just psychological safety as a topic. And so while I have people that I consult for that, I also really go to the people who have researched that topic, who have written about that topic. And so I figure those mentors too. But yeah, I have not personally felt like I was seeking it out when I've, you know, thoughtfully seeking it out. It just kind of happened. So yeah, that's interesting.
But
I love what
that's
you
the
said there.
case, and sorry to interrupt you, Russell, but if that's the case, how do you make sure? Because I agree with you. I think it's something that someone will appear at the right time at the right place. I truly believe that. I mean, it happened to all four of us. It's not one of our stories, it's all four of our stories. And I know that if Sid had been here, he would have probably shared a similar experience. But how do you be in the right place? How do you notice when that person appears? Because they might not be. I mean, Marcel never said, I'm going to be your mentor. It just happened. So how do you know? What do you need to do for someone to say, hey, let's have a conversation?
I heard the harps playing and the music come down from the heavens, but other than that, I'm going to let Russell answer.
I got no harps. I'm not living right, y'all. But I think what Camille said earlier, that informal space, podcast, things like this, books, people that you're around or you can hear or see them. And so I think not discounting the fact that when seeing what someone is better at you at, or perhaps you've had an end of year review or one of those many psychological assessments that says, hey, Russell, you should be better at something. I can be more mindful of who do I see around my universe that excels at that something, and formally, informally, become their student or become in pursuit of that attribute.
And what I would suggest, something that has helped me, but also I noticed that I do. I'm around young professionals quite a few days of the week. And I noticed, especially today, I mean, today it happened again. Someone shared, I asked them about their future. Where are you going to? What are your ambitions? What are your goals for 3 years from now or 5 years from now as you're going? And one person said, well, I want to become an entrepreneur. And I'm like, hey, that's interesting because I'm an entrepreneur. And as she was sharing, she said, I've already known myself well enough to know that being in an office from 9 to 5 is just not how I'm going to be happy or thrive or even give the best of me. So I want to move to that. And I've got the very first 2 steps in mind. And for me, that was like, oh, interesting, because she had one belief that said, well, I have to go to university. I have to have a university diploma to be taken seriously. And I said, I can tell you one thing. I've been an entrepreneur for more than 10 years. Nobody has ever asked me whether I have a university diploma. Now, that was a mini mentoring session, but I could do that because she shared her vision for the future. She shared where she was headed. And I think that is really important. We hold back on our goals and our future. And it doesn't have to be really clear, but you never know who's in the audience listening and thinking, maybe you and I should have a conversation. So that is somewhere that you can bump into your future mentor.
So true.
Okay, cool. So as we're talking about mentoring, what are some of as you're bumping into that person, what's important to know to make the most out of that relationship? Because, I mean, it takes something more if you want it to be beneficial for both parties.
I think and again, I go to a very logical space. So in the times when I had get with Perry, we agreed, I went to our first meeting and I was like, how often are we meeting? What are the kind of things that would be helpful for me to share? Should we communicate in between meetings? Should we not? So I wanted to be very kind of methodical so I could honor his boundaries. And to his credit, he said, oh yeah, I want this frequency. No, you don't have to necessarily reach out to me and tell me what you're doing, but if you want to, that's fine. And so we just kind of fell into that rhythm just by having an open dialogue about it. But I will say that, again, I could tell because we had those parameters of what would be valuable for him. I always came with something. He would always find that valuable, and I always got what I needed from those conversations as well. So having dialogue about what each of you wants that to look like is so beneficial, so that you're not just kind of blowing around with the wind. I think is really, really important.
Okay.
And let me talk about the rules of engagement there. Kind of like, here's how we're going to operate in that relationship for however long, even including how long it's going to last. But for me, it's that clarity. A mentor of mine has said when he gets asked to be a mentor to someone, he'll give them back a question. Hey, what is it specifically you see in me that you think could be helpful to you? And then allowing, first having that kind of go-to question, but then hearing their work more specifically. Ooh, you're good at this, you're good at that, you're good at the other. And then allowing a conversation on that particular topic where they can, both parties can make a better, more informed decision to pursue it or not.
So for me, I think it's a lot of, obviously they have been, or they're on their way to where I want to go. But I also value, so values are really important to me, and I don't necessarily want them to have the same values as I do. And I think that's something that's important for me, because I know we talked about it this morning in the leadership conversation. I'm stubborn, and I know that there's other ways of doing things. And sometimes having somebody that has different values or has a different perspective is really, really important for me.
Yeah. And I think that those are all amazing suggestions when looking. I think the most important is rules of engagement, but we also touched on it, and both Camille and Russell touched on it. What if you haven't bumped into that person, but you know that you want to develop and you have some goals today? Anyone can be your mentor, even people that have passed away a long time ago. And the concept that I learned more than 10 years ago is model success in the world of neurolinguistic programming. And if you know how to do that, you can literally model any skill, any ability, any part of what you want to learn from anyone, even if they're not in your vicinity or even passed away. So what are some of the tips as we're moving into the last couple of minutes of our time together for today? What are some tips on how to model success when you haven't bumped into that mentor yet?
Oh my gosh. Okay. First of all, I know that you and I had this interchange, Luna, because we're always talking about books. And I had said something in Discord. You responded with, oh, have you read, I think it was The Science of Getting Rich, or I forget, it was a Wallace Wattles book. And I was like, yeah. And not only that, but I talked to Wallace like he just is sitting next to me. Like there'll be a moment I'm thinking, oh, well, Wallace would say da 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 da. So I think there's that level of repetition, but also it's the seeking out what gap you want to close, and then figuring out, well, who would be the right mentor. And actually have a very tangible example of this right now. I'm working through kind of my domains that I'm focused on in my content. And one of the frameworks that I was exposed to was just this idea of having a tribe of mentors for each of your topics. So it's who's a writer, who's an author, who's a person you can seek out, and really thoughtfully saying, this is my tribe of mentors on this topic. So I think that's very tangible. On the flip side, though, something that Russell touched on was this day one idea. And I think day ones, especially in the environment that we're in right now, are so important. Is it day one of a new hire? Is it day one of a new client engagement? Is it day one of a new community that you're a part of? Crafting and being thoughtful about how you craft that day one experience can lead to the bumping into of mentors if you're thoughtful about it, right? So that's just my thoughts.
Cool. Russell or Jonathan?
I'd say this idea, like architecting environments to be able to do that, whether the person's alive or not, if it's a book or not, their words or not, their influence or not. I think the opportunity to say, okay, well, there's something there. What are they doing? What can I tell? What can I presume that they're doing? Is it getting up early? Is it staying up late? Is it blocking their calendar? Is there some habit, some attribute that I believe, or maybe they've shared, have led to their success, that I can start to kind of lean in that direction and start to do that. So I think that, again, it gets to that point of, I don't have to know them, they don't have to be alive, but their legacy, their impact can make a big difference in me
Awesome.
forevermore.
Yeah. Success leaves clues. Like Russell just said, it's easy to find those things, especially if you're looking at multiple people and you're looking at the patterns that you're seeing, and just trying to understand a pattern, which is not easy for everybody. It's something that I'm able to see a little bit. I see them quickly, but understanding a pattern and understanding what it means is, it just makes things easier.
Yeah, definitely. And to give you a practical suggestion, especially whether that person is still alive or has passed away, a great way to dive deeper into how they think, because that's one of the parts that you want to know when you're modeling success, is not just their behavior. You also want to know what's their mindset, what is their way of thinking, how did they approach life, how do they approach their work, how do they approach their health, is to read biographies. You really want to dive into, if there's one thing that I would absolutely, and I know I'm recommending a book again, I know, but it's better than Googling, because you never know whether that information is actually reliable about the person. There's a lot of, just look into quotes. The amount of times that quotes are connected to the wrong people is ridiculous. And even quotes that still go around the internet today. And biographies are most of the time written by the person itself, or the person was researched heavily to be able to write it. So it will give you an idea about their background, where they came from, what they had to overachieve, how did they get where they got. And that's such a valuable information, because we usually see them at the end of their success and forget that they've had a journey to get to where they want. And it's so valuable when modeling success to know that journey and to dive deeper in how they think, and not just how they behave today, but how they thought it back in the day. That is absolutely valuable. So those are a couple of things that we wanted to share with you today on the power of a mentor, because we believe in mentors. We've had mentors, we have mentors, we will have mentors in the future. Because we know the power of having that. You can accelerate your learning, you accelerate your growth, you can accelerate your success, and increase your quality of life, which is valuable to each and every single human being on this planet Earth. So I hope that you take action. One of the invitations is, please share your insights or takeaway in the comments whenever you're watching this, whenever you feel like going. Maybe you need to go back a couple of times, but let us know your experience with mentors and whether you're seeking a mentor. You never know who's watching and might say, well, I've just read your comment, I might be interested in having a conversation with you. Well, this is Coaches Roundtable edition for this week. We invite you to join us next week, same time, same place. And a great day for now.